Welcome to Spilling the Tea, where we deep dive into what drives high-performance culture. We'll break down the habits, mindsets, and leadership moves that actually make a difference. Hello and welcome to Spilling the Tea, episode 3. We have 2 guests today, which is a little bit different to what we normally do, and I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Hello.
My name's Lauren. I am a people engagement manager here at Bupa, and I think basically I'm just the number one cheerleader for all our colleagues here at Bupa, and really focused on our colleague engagement and just generally making it a great place for our people to work.
Amazing.
And I'm Trish Donoghue, and I'm the engagement and experience manager for our insurance and functions businesses. And yeah, similar, to be honest, kind of just ensuring that we've got really great listening mechanisms, that our people's voice is heard, and that we're driving some really great action off the back of that to create, honestly, just a great place to work.
Amazing. So this, I don't know how much you know about this podcast, but it's quite new. So as I say, it's only episode 3. It's a high performance podcast with the idea of sharing kind of different like little nuggets that you find really useful that the audience can maybe take away and maybe benefit from. So when you were approached, and I'm looking over at Catherine, because when you were approached to do this, how did it kind of make you feel to be asked to do something like this? Is this something you're kind of like willing to do, or is it, just want to kind of gauge how...
Well, we had this chat earlier, didn't we?
How it went,
yeah.
We were both like a little apprehensive, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess, there's a lot of people in this company. It's a big company, and I felt privileged to being asked. It means a lot.
Yeah, completely the same. I think a lot of the work that we do looks at trying to create great environments for our people, and then I think a lot of the time our work's probably in the background. That's probably where we like to be sometimes. But being asked is a complete privilege. It's a really great opportunity. And I'm looking forward to hopefully instilling some wisdom somehow.
Yes, absolutely.
Have I got any of that?
I'm sure anyone watching will be very much looking forward to seeing what you have to offer. Fantastic. So one question we always ask any guests is, if you're going to have dinner with 3 people, who would those 3 people be?
Well, I did ask Lauren about this earlier because we watched a couple of the other ones and I was like, this is so hard. You want to sound really cultured, don't you?
You want to sound cool.
You want to sound cool. And I asked loads of people, but I think I landed on 3. So I think I went Amy Poehler, who she's a comedian. She just, everything that she's in I love, and there's a series called Parks and Rec, and it's like my comfort food. Put it on when I need a bit of like coming back to myself. So she'd definitely be one. The second, I think, for me was Michelle Obama. Not because I want to sound like really cool, and I mean she's a cool person. But I read her book a few years ago, and I just have so many questions. She's just such an incredible woman. And then the third, I think, would be, we lost my granddad last year, and it would be really nice to just have like a couple of another evening with him. It'd be silly to miss up on that opportunity.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I love that.
That's really nice.
What about you, Lauren?
What about you, Lauren?
Now Trish sounds like really cultural.
I know,
I'm
yeah.
probably
Maybe don't
gonna
answer.
sound,
How can you top that?
I mean, my first thought went to Tom Hardy.
Can I be there too?
Great actor.
Solid.
Great to look at.
Yeah.
I mean, he loves dogs as well, and I'm a massive dog person, so I feel like we'd bond over that. I mean, then I was kind of went to, does it have to be people? I love dogs, so it could just be, me eating dinner with
Tom Hardy and a load of dogs.
So what you want is a room full of puppies and Tom Hardy?
I mean, that would be great.
Okay, let's move on from that. I think that about covers it. So getting on to something a little bit, a touch more serious, I guess. Bupa's purpose, as you know, is helping people live longer, healthier, happier lives and making a better world. What does that mean to you and kind of your teams? And in a nutshell, so it probably means a lot in lots of different aspects of your working life. But if you could sum it up.
I think just helping people to live longer, healthier, happier lives, it's just the core, and really kind of fits in with my kind of personality and my own values. We are such a kind of people-centric company as well, and those values really resonate across kind of teams, people. Yeah, they sit with me. They feel real. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And Trish?
I couldn't agree more. I think there aren't many people who can say they work for an organisation with a purpose like that. And I think when you ask our people how they feel about that purpose, there was such strong results. And I think even if you're working back offices like us, I think you know that you're working towards a larger purpose. And particularly, I think both mine and Lauren's expertise is in engagement, and purpose is such a core part of that. So it feels like a privilege to be working for somewhere that's genuinely trying to help people live longer, healthier, happier lives. And then the element of kind of making a better world as well. It's around the influence we have in our communities, and the world around us too. And there's just, there's not many places that could say you could do that.
Yeah.
I think I definitely feel that as well. You can see there's kind of real progress being made, especially that last bit where obviously got added on 3 years ago, 3 years ago, but it feels like it was added on with real
intent.
Real intent, and you can definitely feel that. Another question we ask everyone is what your 3 non-negotiables are in your kind of working life.
Well, I think I always come back to wanting to make a difference. Rob in particular, I've heard him speak a few times, and I remember him talking about his purpose of why he does what he does, and it's incredible. It's genuinely brilliant. I think for me, mine has to be I want to make a difference, and that sits in probably the element of everything that I do at home and at work. I think with that probably comes, without sounding Bupa blue, but the values that we have to sit in the work that I do as well. So Rob's point around like kindness, brave, caring, responsible are really important to making sure you do good work, but you do it the right way. I think it's really important to me. And then maybe the third element, there's lots of things like balance, exercise, all of that is important, but I think thinking particularly of work, there's an element for me around the people you do it with as well. You can work, got great purpose, got great people, and that's a really big element of what you do. And I feel really lucky actually to be doing really good work with really great people in a really great environment. So it's all I could really ask for. And I think they are the 3 things I'd be looking for in any role, career, job, purpose I'm doing. So
amazing. Lauren?
So many of those sit with me as well. I think the purpose especially, it's kind of everything that we do has purpose, and it's knowing what that purpose is that really helps you to kind of like, understand whether you're doing something meaningful and that's going to have kind of that impact on people. Something else for me is listening. That's kind of like a non-negotiable, because the importance of listening is just it's incredible. And when you listen to somebody, and like when we say listen, genuinely listen, you really get to kind of understand people's motives, what makes them tick, and you just get to know about them so much more. So I think listening is probably something that's quite understated, but super important, and something that I always really kind of value. I guess something personal to me as well is I like to do meditation on an evening before I go to sleep. That is my non-negotiable. I find it quite hard sometimes to switch off. A lot of stuff will be racing around kind of the brain from what's been going on in the day. So having that kind of 10-15 minutes me time before I go to bed, whether it's, listening to some kind of sleep meditation or just doing a bit of journaling, just really kind of positiveness just helps to kind of, it's my non-negotiable.
That's amazing that you
Love
do that,
that.
because I think that's one of those things that everyone's like, I really should do that, and don't do it. So absolute respect for you for sticking in and making it a non-negotiable, because that's a biggie. And also, of course, with the new spilling the tea mugs, I'm going to have to ask you, how do you take your tea?
After you, Lauren.
Oh, I feel like mine's a really controversial answer. A baby tea, milky, very milky, not very strong. Yeah, I get that reaction a lot when people ask me.
Mine would be usually fruity, so ginger, peppermint.
So not a standard
No, controversial.
English breakfast tea. Just wouldn't drink it.
I'm more coffee, but I do like a tea, but it does need to be ginger, peppermint, something with no milk.
Exotic.
Well,
very
there's no
exotic.
judgment. There's no judgment here. So
Thanks.
you take it however you
I'm
however
hoping
you
they
like.
don't revoke my passport.
No.
Out loud.
Love it. Okay, into some of the gritty ones. The first question's around mindset and self-awareness. How do you manage negative self-talk?
I'll go. Lauren and I spoke about this before, and my honest answer is not always well. I think accepting that it comes in peaks and troughs is really important, and being able to have the right tools and kind of the flags to know what's happening and when is really important. I think there's a couple that I have, so I think having a really good network around you is really important. I'm really lucky, got a great team, I've also got a really great support network at home. But there's also elements that you can use, learning from things like personal energy at Bupa that have been really helpful around doing the things that give you energy and keep you going as well, which is really helpful. So maintaining some of that around like good exercise, socialising, really important. I think there's also an old manager talking to me about like what's the evidence, so using those tools to kind of check yourself when you have those moments of self-doubt or negative talk, to kind of go, is that you, or is there real evidence to suggest that that's happening? But I think the element of it is just, I think we talked about being kind to yourself, isn't it? And a lot of the time that negative self-talk comes from a place of you caring. You want to do a great job, you want to make a really big impact, and actually that's a really great place to start. In essence, not always well, but knowing when and what to do when it comes, I think is really important.
Yeah.
What about you, Lauren?
That's it. I think, it probably resonates with everyone. Like even, the people that you think that have got everything kind of switched on and, are on it will probably have, self-doubt and negative self-talk. And, I think it's recognising it, but, not being harsh about it and just trying to kind of, switch it into that positive kind of sentiment as well. I always think when you recognise that you're doing kind of negative self-talk, think to yourself, would I say this to my friend, And the answer is always no.
Nope.
I'm never going to say, oh God, you're doing a really, really bad job, to my friend. So it's just treating yourself with that kindness and that respect. It can be hard to recognise it, I think, as well. But I do think that negativity breeds negativity. So if you kind of are having a lot of negative self-talk, you can bring that kind of into your life as well. I was joking with Trish earlier. I was like, when I was, and not now, but even going back a few years ago, I used to be like the most unluckiest person ever. It was like an ongoing joke with my friends and family. Like if something bad was going to happen, like it would happen to me, and people would just be like, "Oh yeah, it's just Lauren. She's unlucky." But I think I was genuinely like attracting that bad luck because I was constantly like just being critical of myself and bringing that kind of negativity. So I really kind of made it my effort to really kind of understand what I was, doing, and that kind of negative self-talk and bringing myself back around. I think it's also about recognizing like your achievements as well and reminding yourself of the good things that you have done, and just bringing yourself back into that positive mindset.
Yeah,
Really helpful.
like you said, sometimes easier said than done, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you kind of stay on track and keep focus when there's distractions around? Obviously, sometimes life can be really, really, really busy, right? But how do you kind of maintain that real focus and drive and prioritization of what you're doing?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I mean, I'm definitely a bit of a people pleaser, so I feel like I need to respond to somebody straight away. So I could be doing a project, and Teams pops up, and I'll answer you, and then an email comes through, and I think, oh yeah, I'll just go and answer that, and then an hour later I could be like, what was I actually doing in the first place here? And it's so easy to kind of get into that trap and to do that, and to think that you kind of have to respond to people straight away, when in reality, you know, what you're working on is probably the priority. So I think it's really kind of understanding what your priorities are for the day, and just trying to not so much focus on being kind of the perfect focus, but rather than adjusting kind of your environment and your surroundings to kind of enable you to be a bit more centered. So I think doing things in chunks always works for me. You know, I'm going to take X amount of time to do this, give it my all focus, and then take a break, because I think having those breaks is super important, and it just kind of helps you to just kind of what's the word that I'm looking for? It just helps you to kind of recenter again and understand what your next priority is.
Yeah.
Love
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, all the same, I'm a prolific people pleaser. Sidelined with a nice bit of perfectionism on the side. Great combination. And yeah, so it's really important. It's like really important to try and kind of muddle your way through distractions, especially when you're working on things that really matter and are important. I think for me, all the stuff you've said, plus maybe like knowing yourself as well. So I think for me, I know that I work better in the mornings. If I'm trying to work on something that is about really just getting a report done or getting a piece of work done, I have to be in the environment that you need is really important as well. So I will lock myself in a room, nice bowl of snacks. 7 a.m, that would be sorted.
Pop in the Pringles.
100%. So yeah, like knowing yourself and knowing what you need in that moment is really important. But also knowing like what you need for different situations. So I think for me that getting something done requires a small a very distraction-free zone. Whereas if I'm creating something that needs to be creative, or it's a strategy or something, like again, like diversity of thought, having people in the room, it's really important. So again, I think knowing what you need to get that work done is really important, and then also having the right environment is really key too. And then the practical elements you've just talked about, like chunking it down, prioritization, really important. So yeah, again, do it. Works sometimes, works doesn't always.
Do you both work remotely, or do you work from the office most of the time? And do you see a difference in that? Because I guess from the previous question as well around negative self-talk, if you're not around people as much, for some people that could be a little bit derailing.
I think so. I think so I work flexibly, so I'm in the office and at home, kind of split it 50-50. And I travel as well into our different offices, but that's quite a personal choice. And I enjoy, again, knowing yourself. It's about kind of what environment you need to do the right work. I think when you look at a lot of the research in the market talking about the impact of COVID and kind of more remote working, you can see there are absolute benefits. Flexibility being a massive one, especially for particular demographics of people. Working mums being a really good one, carers, but lots and lots of others. But it does come with some levels of, at points, probably isolation. So I do think that you do have to step up your level of connection and commitment. And I think we're seeing that in our own kind of like business results, aren't we? There is a place for office work and what you do, and it's all about connection, collaboration and that work. But there's also a place for, if possible, I know again when we look at our kind of clinics part of the business and hospitals, not always as much of an option, but equally that there's a position and a place for all of it. And I think it's about being more cognizant and putting more effort in and being a bit more innovative as well around how we're connecting and collaborating.
That actually leads us on beautifully to the next question, in fact. So around like performance optimization, how do you think that listening to employees can make a business successful?
Listening is massive.
Agree.
Such a simple concept, but really, really kind of transformative, and it can make such a huge difference. I think when you genuinely listen to somebody, you empower people. You make them feel valued. You make them feel heard, and you give them kind of a safety net where they feel comfortable to speak up as well. I think when people feel listened to, they're more motivated, and they're more inspired to just kind of really give their best, and really kind of strive for excellence in the service that they deliver to our customers, to each other as well, and provide really good teamwork and support. And we can see this naturally then having a really great impact on customers, on performance. It clicks together. I think if you are doing right by your people, you're listening, you're taking action, your business can kind of take care of itself almost, because your performance, your commercials, they naturally will just continue to increase because your people are engaged and they're doing all the right things.
I couldn't agree more. I think there are so many reports out there that show like the business benefits of listening and what that has, and from everything from driving more positive results and engagement, talent acquisition, attrition, to then also looking at your business performance, as you said. So we're looking at better NPS, better customer experience scores, and that's being driven because you're listening to your people and they're driving the solutions. So there's so much out there that shows that, and we're seeing it at Bupa as well, in terms of we're seeing our engagement results increase because we're listening as our superpower, as we know. We're seeing the benefits and the correlations and the results of that. But I think the actual element of it is, I think if you look at it's Engage for Success as an external party that looks at engagement in the workplace. So there's like 4 quadrants of driving great engagement, and listening is just one, and the other is actually around the action you drive on the side of it. So listening is super important, but what you do about it is equally important. And Laura and I were talking about this earlier around saying you can listen and you can act, but sometimes you can't, and actually being open and honest about what you can do, what you can't, and why is just as important as all the other elements. So I think, for me, I think the other element is around it's about sustainable business performance. I think you could probably get great results without listening, but I'm not sure you could sustain great results without really listening and creating an environment where your people are invested and excited about what you're doing.
I think as well, like your people, they're closest to the work. They know what their experiences of our customers are. They see the opportunities, they see the challenges on a day-to-day basis. When you go to your people, they will always have the answers to your questions, to any challenges, because they just, they're closest to the work. And that's something that we really kind of pride ourselves on at Bupa, which I absolutely love, is really kind of listening to our colleagues to understand their experiences and what we can do better as an organisation to make things better for, not just our people, but our customers as well.
And how do you do that? So we're a big business, right? And there's a lot of employees. How do you kind of foster that, like, open communication? And that kind of that trust that actually, we as employees are going to be listened to, and we know there is going to be action. Like how does that kind of work? What's your vehicle? What's your process to make sure that people feel comfortable doing that?
How long have you got? It's so much work. It's so much work, and so should it be, because the output you get is incredible. I think mechanisms, thinking practically about it, we've got everything from we do a biannual engagement survey, which we call People Pulse, all linked to our Love Working Here brand, where we ask our people how happy they are working here, but also a load of drivers around things that correlate to that engagement that are both important to them and to our business and achieving our objectives. We have networks that we listen to a subsection of our population regularly, like at minimum monthly, on kind of a bit of a dip sample, what's going on, make sure we've got a safety net. We have experience moment surveys to understand the experience of people potentially at really important parts of their career with us, so joining, leaving, parental returners, promotions, etc. as well. And that's just some of them. I think those listening mechanisms are incredibly important. And I don't know, I think it would be a good place to talk about this, but I think the investment in creating that psychologically safe environment that's two-way, so connecting your business to your people and having that two-way communication that creates psychological safety is key. And then I don't know if you agree, but I think the final element around like that action and that feedback loop.
Absolutely. I think there's, two main key things for me. And the first is kind of feeling comfortable and safe to be able to open up and express your opinion, whether it's positive or negative, and that there's not going to be kind of a negative after effect on the back of you kind of voicing that. And it's about feeling empowered to challenge like the status quo, but also kind of we invest a lot in our leaders and kind of their leadership behaviours, and really kind of encouraging them to lead with heart and to genuinely listen, because how kind of somebody experiences that from their leader, can have a big impact on whether they will continue to kind of speak up and give their ideas going forward. So, it's about really kind of empowering somebody to be able to share what's on their mind and being open to what they're saying. But following up on the feedback 100%. I think we can't shout about and do it enough, really. The big thing for somebody to give their idea and then to see actual action being taken on the back of it instills so much trust. And it's really important that if it's something that we can't do, that we give the why and we explain it to them. Otherwise, they're just going to see their kind of idea going into the ethos and nothing's ever happened with it. No action's been taken. They're going to lose that trust in us. So, it's a lot about communication as well, and really kind of shouting out about the things that we are doing in response to our people's feedback.
Yeah, and I think you can... That's really fascinating, and you can see by the amount of people here that have had long careers here, means that Bupa are doing something right. They are obviously being listened to, and there's actions being taken, but that there's also a career there for people, right? And being such a vast and diverse business. Even though you come in to one role doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stay in that department. And I don't know if you guys have moved around, but we've been in, I've certainly been kind of doing different things in the business. So kind of on the whole career and what it means for kind of personal growth, what initiatives or key initiatives do you think there are in Bupa to kind of enable that and empower people to really take their career by the horns, if you like?
Where do we begin?
I know. I think you should start, actually, because you have definitely got a good squiggly career in Bupa.
I think for me, it's how intentional we are at Bupa about developing our people and their careers. From things like talent cards that we have. So that's kind of, everybody has a profile and we can put in our skills and experience, and our recruitment team are almost becoming like internal headhunters, so they can really kind of look into the talent pool that we have here at Bupa to put us in the career opportunities that are coming up, rather than having to go externally as well, which is just fantastic. But also I think regular career conversations are super important. It's something that we've created a really good rhythm of. It's not just once a year, it's constant, and I think, myself, I've had quite a career kind of development with Bupa. I've been at Bupa for 8 years now. I started, everybody says this, I started in just an admin stopgap job. Honestly, I feel like it's so cliche, but and the intention probably wasn't to stick around, but I just fell in love with the company, and I've had some really, really good supportive managers that have constantly kind of pushed me and really made me see the opportunities that are out there and want to aspire to do more. And I kind of have built my way up through different career paths in care services and communications, and then really kind of found my niche in engagement. And I think how I've been encouraged really kind of, it sits with me so much, and it makes me want others in the company to experience that too, and to feel kind of that pride in working for Bupa, and that kind of the possibilities are endless, because they really are. Can I just mention another thing really quickly? Something that I absolutely am obsessed with at the moment. We have got the most amazing program called our Horizon programs. It's basically like a global mobility program. Obviously at Bupa, we're a global company as well, so we're not just in the UK. We are India and global as well. And this program gives colleagues the chance to kind of step into somebody else's world, visit another country, make new connections, and just gain like really valuable work experience and insights. Because I think it's not just about progressing and those upwards moves as well. It's about kind of learning those new skills that we can take into our everyday roles as well. That is equally as important as a promotion. So I absolutely just love that opportunity.
That's good. I think you're talking about the mechanisms that we have at Bupa. I think first, I think learning and development we know is innately linked to driving great engagement. So if we want to retain diverse, inclusive talent, I think investing in our people's learning and development is absolutely a necessity to ensure that not only are they going to exceed here, but they're going to develop outside of work as well. And I think the Horizon programme is one really good example, but we're investing really heavily in kind of our talent and succession processes and ensuring that they're more inclusive than ever. But we're also investing in things like apprenticeships. We've got our Bupa campus, which is looking at, excelling our clinical academy and ensuring that we're genuinely hitting that objective of, creating the most customer-centric organisation that we can. So I think when it comes to kind of practical mechanisms of investment, that there's so many depending on what part of the business you're in. And I think that the other part for me is really around, it's not just about inside work. I think development, often you think it's the next job. But I think it's really kind of evolving people's thoughts around, it's about maybe what that skills development is. For Horizon's about developing your network, your cultural nuance and understanding, as well as that skills development. But we also have volunteer days. So, we're allowed to, we're empowering our people to go and invest in the communities that we represent and give back. And that in itself is fantastic in terms of development too. So I think we were saying earlier that I think Bupa's probably one of the only places I've worked where you could probably go in and you could be whatever you want. So I'm working in engagement in the people team. I could be an actuarial. I could go and be a clinical nurse. I really believe that's true if you've got the drive and the commitment to go and make that happen. And again, there's not many places I think that could say that.
No, if you genuinely want to kind of, God, what's the word? I do this all the time, sorry. If you genuinely want to progress and kind of have that career with Bupa, you 100% will, because that support and that backing is there all the time. Yeah.
Agree.
I think that is a perfect way to end, actually. Thank you both, Trish, Lauren, for being guests on our podcast. I don't know what we're meant to call it nowadays. But thank you so much for taking the time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.